So in the last few hours, there's been numerous reports that Klitschko versus Joshua is near done. Eddie Hearn has been fairly vocal that the fight is very close to being made. He did an interview with BBC Radio 5 earlier today. It's been reported in The Telegraph. It's been reported in various other websites, Boxing News 24. There's a lot of stuff out there. And Hearn is basically saying, we've agreed, the money, we've got everything like that sorted. Joshua wants to fight Klitschko. Klitschko wants to fight Joshua. We just need to get the paperwork organised. So Hearn is giving the impression that this is a mere formality. I'm dubious. I'm dubious for two reasons. Number one, I'm not sure that this fight makes sense from an Anthony Joshua perspective. There is a limit to what you can actually gain from beating Wladimir Klitschko. Wladimir Klitschko was deemed by many fans too old when Tyson Fury fought him a year ago. He's now a year older and he's already been beaten recently. So how much credit will he get? Klitschko doesn't come with the belts like he used to. So there's kind of less reward from beating Klitschko at this stage. He doesn't have belts attached to his name. He doesn't have 10 years of being undefeated. He's already been beaten by a British heavyweight, etc. But the risk is very, very high. It's a huge step up for Anthony Joshua, up against a mega puncher, a massive guy, a hugely experienced operator in the division. So I'm not quite sure risk-reward adds up here. And the other thing that makes me question whether this fight's going to happen is Eddie Hearn says we just need to arrange the paperwork. And he says that as if it's nothing. Arranging the paperwork with Wladimir Klitschko is a very, very, very big job, as I understand it. Those contracts will be poured over. There'll be huge amounts of lawyers involved. Let's be honest, Klitschko is going to have it what he wants with drug testing, with the size of the ring, with the gloves, with the canvas. This is not going to be an easy negotiation, and in terms of the formalities of sorting out the paperwork, I imagine that is a very extensive set of formalities. So it's interesting. It's interesting. I am not convinced this fight is going to happen. I have never been convinced it's going to happen, and all the way through I've said that I'm sceptical. Having said that, it's being reported over and over and over again. So for the purposes of this video, we're going to run with the fact that the fight has been made. We're going to go with that. And I have written down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9 key questions. So 9 key questions that I want answered should this fight be made. 9 key questions. So we're going to rattle through them, and I think these are 9 interesting points to consider before this potential fight goes ahead. Number 1, belts. What is on the line for this? Is this going to be a voluntary title defence of Anthony Joshua's IBF title? That would seemingly make sense. So is Klitschko going to forego his strong position with other governing bodies to just fight for the IBF title? Will there be an opportunity for other vacant titles to be on the line? I think that's a key question, and one that I don't know the answer to. If you know the answer, comment below. I suspect we're looking at this being an IBF voluntary. But that's the key question for me. Number 2, Klitschko's age. A lot of people were fast to discredit Tyson Fury's win over Wladimir Klitschko, saying that Wladimir Klitschko had too many miles on the clock and was too old. Those same people now seem to be hyping this Joshua fight as amazing, amazing fight. My question is, if Wladimir Klitschko was too old against Tyson Fury a year ago, how is he not going to be too old a year later against Anthony Joshua? I think that's a key question. Has Wladimir Klitschko actually got old overnight? Has Father Time caught up with him? Or was he beaten by Tyson Fury because of Tyson Fury's skill and Tyson Fury's style? If he's got old overnight, if he's half the man he used to be because of Father Time, then Joshua should beat him. But if it was just Tyson Fury's style that got the better of him, this becomes a very, very, very competitive fight. So what's your perspective on that? Because I think in terms of predicting this fight, that is a very, very key question to ascertain. Number 3, Anthony Joshua versus the Wladimir Klitschko jab. We haven't really seen opponents look to establish a jab against Anthony Joshua. maybe we've seen it at a lesser level. I know Gary Cornish caught Joshua with a few jabs early on, for example. But what I'm getting at is we haven't seen anyone of relevant note look to establish a jab against Anthony Joshua. Now, I'm in my mid-20s. I consider the Wladimir Klitschko jab to be the best heavyweight jab since I have actively been watching boxing. I'm not saying historically there aren't better jabs. Obviously, Larry Holmes, Sonny Liston, George Foreman, there's lots of names out there. What I'm saying is, in terms of the fighters who've been active whilst I've been watching the sport, that is the jab that sticks out for me. And as we know, Klitschko throws everything off the jab. How is Joshua going to cope with that jab? Is that jab going to dictate the range? Is that jab going to dictate the pace? Will Joshua have a jab off with Wladimir Klitschko? I think the Wladimir Klitschko jab is still his best asset and is still something that I think is a key consideration in this fight. Question 4. The Joshua punch resistance versus the Wladimir Klitschko power. The Klitschko power is very proven. Look at the array of knockouts on his resume. Guys like Kubrat Pulev, even relatively recently, most people consider Pulev to be a top 10 heavyweight. Even relatively recently, Klitschko beat him up, knocked him out. Alexander Povetkin, most people consider him to be a top 5 heavyweight. I don't believe Povetkin's ever been stopped. Klitschko dropped him 5 or 6 times. Might have been 6 times in that fight, I think. Klitschko is a very, very, very big hitter. He's got huge power in a lead left. He's got huge power in a straight right. Joshua, there's rumours he's been knocked out in sparring by David Price. He was hurt by Dillian White in the amateurs. He was hurt by Dillian White in the pros. What is Joshua's punch resistance like? It hasn't really been tested excessively in the pros. He's only had one notable punch landed on him, which was the big haymaker that Dillian White caught him with. So, for me, that's a key consideration going into this fight. I think, in all likelihood, if the two guys do fight, Joshua will get clipped at some stage. And how is his chin, how is his punch resistance going to hold up to that Wladimir Klitschko big right hand? Klitschko may be an ageing warrior, but as the cliche goes, power is the last thing to go, power is the last thing to fade, and Klitschko carries a huge amount of power. So I think that's a very, very big question. Number 5, is there a rematch clause? I presume so. This is a voluntary defence for Anthony Joshua's title. So I presume there is going to be a rematch clause in the fight. Now that's relevant because Klitschko's an older guy. So let's say Klitschko knocks out Anthony Joshua and then AJ gets an immediate rematch. Potentially that takes Klitschko through to the end of his career, because by the time he's dealt with the rematch, how old is he going to be then? So I think that's something just to have in mind. Number 6, the referee. Klitschko is so used to fighting at home in Germany on Klitschko bills, where he can dictate the gloves, he can dictate the ring canvas, etc. Let's see what it's like in the UK on an Eddie Hearn show in front of Joshua's home fans. Klitschko is synonymous with the jab and grab tactics. British fans aren't going to like that, especially when it's against the British golden boy of Anthony Joshua. Is the referee over here going to take a firmer stance to the Klitschko holding technique compared to what referees have done in the past in terms of allowing Klitschko to jab and grab and completely shut opponents down just by holding them on the inside? For me, that's absolutely key. Absolutely key. If you see the referee give Klitschko a severe warning first time he holds, it's enlightening. If Klitschko is holding 3 or 4 times in the first 2 rounds and the referee's letting it go, it could be a long night for Anthony Joshua. Question number 7. What's the venue? Are we looking at Manchester? Are we looking at the O2? Are we looking at the Millennium Stadium? Obviously, they're not going to be able to do the fight outdoors. It's going to be in December, most likely. So what's going to happen? What is going to happen in terms of venue? Where is the fight going to be? Interesting. Number 8 is the date. Now, initially, Joshua was scheduled to fight late November. The rumours I've been hearing is that Chisora will now fight Dillian White on that night, and Joshua will fight on December the 10th against Wladimir Klitschko. Now, December the 10th is an interesting night because it's rumoured Gennady Golovkin will fight Danny Jacobs that night. It's also been announced by David Haye that is his intended comeback night. Now, clearly, Anthony Joshua versus Wladimir Klitschko is likely to be a bigger fight than David Haye versus opponent X. However, there's a key difference. Anthony Joshua versus Wladimir Klitschko is most likely going to be 20 quid on Sky Sports box office. David Haye versus an opponent is likely to be free to air on Dave. So, despite the fact that Anthony Joshua Klitschko is undeniably a bigger fight, how will that clash affect the evening? Because I know a lot of boxing fans who would be inclined to watch the David Haye fight on Dave free to air and then watch the Klitschko-Joshua fight afterwards, hoping it's been uploaded to YouTube or something similar by the time the David Haye fight concludes. So I think that's a potential factor to consider. Will this change things up? Will this mean the Dillian Whyte versus Chisora fight is less likely to happen? Will it mean David Haye's comeback fight that night is less likely to happen? Who knows? These are all things to consider. Number 9. And this wouldn't be a question other than the fact it's been reported left, right and centre that this is a £30 million fight. Don't know if you guys have seen these reports. I've seen multiple reports saying this is a £30 million fight. I can't see in a month of Sundays how this is a £30 million fight. I really can't see it. How many pay-per-view buys are they expecting to do to make this a £30 million fight? You know, let's not forget, I read a good article about, you know, when Frotts fought Groves, and the rumour was at the time that Sky was getting 50% of the pay-per-view revenue. Now that may have obviously been negotiated and changed since then, but Sky are taking a huge chunk. You know, how on earth are they going to get the numbers up to 30 million for a fight of this nature? Let's think about it logically. Let's say they do it at the O2 and sell 20,000 tickets with an average ticket price of 50 quid. Let's go 100 quid actually, let's not be conservative, let's go 100 quid. So 20,000 tickets at £100 a go. That's £2 million. Let's be wildly optimistic. You know, Joshua, I think he's done best part of 500,000 pay-per-view buys before. Let's say he doubles it for this fight. Let's say he does 1 million pay-per-view buys at £20 a go. You know, that's 20 million. So you've got 20 million in pay-per-view buys, you've got 2 million in ticket sales. And that's me being optimistic on both the pay-per-view buys at 1 million and the ticket sales 20,000 at 100 quid. I'm sure there's other revenue to go in there, such as sponsorship, etc. But you've got to factor in the cut that Sky are going to take of the pay-per-view money. You've got to factor in the VAT that Eddie Hearn's going to have to pay. You've got to factor in, you know, all the costs of staging the event, booking the venue, paying the undercard fighters, paying security, having the doctors at ringside, flying in Wladimir Klitschko, putting his team up in the hotel. You know, for me, in terms of what the fighters' purses are going to be looking like, Eddie Hearn will know better than I will, of course, but I would have estimated you'd be looking at £10 million worth of purses, or maybe £12 million worth of purses. The £30 million mark seems ludicrous to me. I don't know where that's coming from, unless they're expecting this fight to do pay-per-view numbers rivaling Mayweather-Pacquiao. I just don't think that's the case in Britain. Let me know your thoughts, people. 9 key questions for me leading up to this fight. The keyest question of all, which is not included in those 9, is will the fight actually happen? I'll believe it when I see it. I'm still sceptical even to this day, but I wanted to discuss some of my thoughts leading up to the fight and some of the key discussion points because this fight seems to be on everyone's mind at present. Let me know your thoughts. Leave your comments in the section below on the questions I have raised here. If you've enjoyed this, hit the thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, do take the time to subscribe. And if you want to support further, please share this video on your Twitter, on your Facebook, on your social media so we can help get it out to a wider audience. I'd really appreciate that. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good evening.